One bolt of lightning. 147 years of blood. 3 hours of fire. August 23rd, 217 AD, the day the fire god took his revenge. 50,000 Romans watched the sky split open above the Colosseum. They watched wood that had stood for generations ignite in seconds. They watched the monument to Roman immortality die. But here's what the history books won't tell you. Most people didn't die from the flames. They died from each other. They died in the crush, in the panic, in the desperate mathematics of survival when 50,000 humans realize there aren't enough exits. This is the story of the night Rome learned a brutal truth. Stone may be eternal, but people burn just fine. They chose the wrong day to anger a god. August 23rd wasn't just any day in Rome. It was Vulcanalia, the sacred festival of Vulcanus, god of fire, the destructive fire, the creative fire, the fire that forges weapons and burns cities in equal measure. All across Rome, priests were throwing live fish into flames, sacrifices, appeasement, ancient rituals older than the city itself. The message was clear. Please, Vulcanus, don't burn us today. But Emperor Macrinus, the usurper, the assassin, the man who'd murdered Caracalla just 14 months earlier, he'd made a mistake, a ritual error. He'd canceled the sacred horse races dedicated to Vulcanus. Saved money. Practical. Efficient. The priests whispered warnings. The augurs read the omens in animal entrails and saw nothing but smoke. Macrinus ignored them all. By sunset, 50,000 Romans would learn why you don't ignore gods of fire on their sacred day. The Flavian Amphitheater, Romans just called it the Amphitheatrum, stood 50 meters tall in the heart of the city. For 147 years, it had been Rome's answer to mortality. A place where death became entertainment, where 400,000 people, gladiators, criminals, prisoners of war, had died to prove Rome's power over life itself. Tonight's games were supposed to be spectacular. 2 retiari, net fighters, performing a dance of death for imperial pleasure. Beast hunts scheduled for the finale. Lions, bears, the usual. Marcus Valerius stood 50 meters above the arena floor, his hands working rope that was older than his father. At 43, he'd been a Valerius, a sailor of the Great Awning, for 18 years. His job was simple: control the massive velarium that shaded 50,000 Romans from the sun. The velarium was a marvel. 240 by 150 meters of canvas, supported by 80 wooden masts, controlled by hundreds of hemp ropes and pulleys. It took 50 men working in perfect synchronization to operate. The Imperial Roman Navy provided the crew, actual sailors, because nobody else understood the physics of wind and tension at that scale. But Marcus understood something else, something he'd learned from his father, who'd learned from his father. When the sky turns that particular shade of green-black, you get off the ropes. Fast. Storm coming, he called to his son Julius, 16 years old, still learning, still believing nothing could go wrong. We've handled storms before, Julius grinned. The immortal stupidity of youth. Marcus looked west. The clouds weren't just dark. They were alive, churning. Modern meteorology would call it a supercell, a self-sustaining storm system with winds reaching 160 kilometers per hour, capable of spawning tornadoes and generating lightning strikes every 3 seconds. Romans just called it the wrath of Vulcanus. Retract the velarium, Marcus ordered. Now, below them, 50,000 Romans were oblivious. They cheered, they bet, they ate and drank and watched men try to kill each other. Entertainment, distraction, the empire's most essential service. In the imperial box, Emperor Macrinus sat rigid, 54 years old, former Praetorian prefect, assassin, usurper. He'd killed Caracalla with a sword thrust to the kidney. Quick, brutal, efficient. Then he'd claimed the throne. 14 months of power. 14 months of looking over his shoulder. 14 months of knowing that half of Rome wanted him dead, and the other half was just waiting to see who moved first. The Colosseum was his proof of legitimacy. As long as the games continued, as long as the people had their blood and circuses, his throne was secure. He had no idea he had 3 hours left. Marcus's hands moved on autopilot. 18 years of muscle memory. Pull this rope, secure that knot. Signal the crew on the opposite side. The velarium was retracting, but too slowly. The canvas had been treated with wax and tar, waterproofing, essential for Roman engineering, fatal in what was coming. How long? His second in command, Titus shouted. 15 minutes if we're lucky, 10 if we're not. The wind was picking up. Marcus could feel it in the ropes. That particular vibration that meant tension was building beyond safety margins. If one rope snapped, the cascade failure would kill half the crew in seconds. 50-meter drops, stone landings, no survivors. Julius was on the far side of the structure, 80 meters away, working with a team of younger sailors. Good men, strong men, men who thought they were immortal because they worked 50 meters above Rome and hadn't died yet. Marcus had trained them all. He'd told them the rules. Rule 1, always clip your safety rope. Rule 2, never trust old hemp. Rule 3, when the sky turns green, nothing else matters. But sailors were like gladiators. They thought death was something that happened to other people. The rain started at 8:47 p.m. We know the exact time because Cassius Dio, senator, historian, eyewitness, recorded it. He was in the stands that night, 300 meters away when the sky opened. The rain wasn't normal. It was violent, torrential, the kind of rain that turns streets into rivers in seconds, the kind that makes you understand why ancient peoples believed in angry gods. Marcus felt the first drops, hot, humid, electric. "Get down," he screamed. "Everyone off the ropes." But the noise, 50,000 Romans screaming at gladiators, thunder rolling across the valley, the velarium canvas snapping in the wind. His voice was nothing. The first lightning strike hit at 8:49 p.m. It struck the Arch of Constantine, 200 meters away. The sound was beyond sound. It was pressure, physics, the air itself splitting apart. Every Roman in the Colosseum felt it in their chest. That moment when your heart skips, when your body remembers that it's mortal. The second strike hit at 8:51 p.m. This one struck the Metas Sudans, the massive fountain beside the Colosseum. Water and electricity. The fountain exploded. Marble blocks weighing 500 kilograms flew through the air like toys. Marcus grabbed the nearest structural beam. His knuckles were white. His son was still 80 meters away. Julius, the boy couldn't hear him. Julius was working a rope, trying to secure a section that was flapping in the wind. Focused, professional, doing exactly what his father had trained him to do. The third strike hit at 8:53 p.m. It hit the Colosseum. Specifically, it hit the Manianum Summum in Lignis, the highest seating level, the wooden gallery where slaves and women sat 50 meters above the arena floor. The section that was entirely, completely, catastrophically flammable. The bolt struck with 1 billion volts. Temperature, 30,000 degrees Celsius, 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. The wood didn't burn. It exploded. Marcus watched the beam, ancient timber, sun-dried for decades, shatter into splinters. The pieces flew outward like arrows. One piece, as long as his leg, shot past his face. He felt the heat of it, felt it singe his beard. Titus wasn't so lucky. The man had worked beside Marcus for 12 years. They'd raised their children together. Their wives were friends. Their families shared meals. The splinter took him in the chest. Not his throat, his chest, right through the sternum. Titus looked down at the wood protruding from his body. His face showed confusion. Not pain yet, confusion. "Marcus?" he said. A question, an appeal to logic. "Marcus, I don't." Then the pain arrived. His scream lasted 4 seconds before his vocal cords gave out. His hands grabbed the splinter, tried to pull it out. Basic instinct. Remove the foreign object. Marcus grabbed his wrists. Don't move it. But they both knew. They both understood the mathematics. A splinter that size, that deep, it had punctured a lung, maybe the heart. Moving it would just make him bleed faster. Titus had maybe 5 minutes. The fire started 2 seconds later. The lightning strike had ignited a wooden support beam, ancient timber, dry as bone after 147 summers. But that was just the spark. The real catastrophe was the velarium itself. Remember, 240 by 150 meters of canvas, treated with wax and tar for waterproofing. The material was essentially ancient napalm. When the lightning struck, when the burning wood fell onto the canvas, it didn't just catch fire, it became fire. The flames spread across the velarium in a circle. Fast, faster than men could run. The wax melted, the tar ignited. The hemp ropes, hundreds of them, each thicker than a man's arm, caught like fuses. Marcus watched it happen. Watched the fire race around the elliptical structure, following the wind, feeding on oxygen. Modern fire science has a term for what happened next: flashover. When everything combustible in a space ignites simultaneously, temperature spikes to 1,000 degrees Celsius in seconds. Romans just watched and prayed. The velarium began to collapse inward, slowly at first, almost graceful, like a giant bird folding its wings. Then gravity took over. Marcus ran 80 meters of wooden scaffolding, burning, collapsing. Men were screaming. Some were jumping, 50-meter drops, choosing impact over fire. The sound of bodies hitting stone echoed through the structure. Julius, the boy, was trapped. A rope had caught his ankle when the velarium collapsed. He was on his back, trying to cut himself free with a knife. The fire was 20 meters away, then 15, then 10. Marcus reached him at 5 meters. The heat was a physical thing, a wall you could lean against. The air itself was wrong, too thick, too hot, tasted like metal and ash. Marcus grabbed the knife, sawed at the rope. But hemp is strong. That's why Romans used it. That's why it held ships together, held siege weapons together, held the entire velarium system together. Now it was holding his son in place while fire approached. "Dad, leave me," Julius said, 16 years old, voice cracking. "You can still make it." Marcus didn't answer, just sawed harder. His hands were bleeding. The knife was dull. The rope was thick. The fire was 3 meters away. "Dad, shut up and hold still." 1 meter. The rope snapped. Marcus grabbed Julius, hauled him up. They ran for the stairs. Behind them, the section of scaffolding where Julius had been trapped collapsed into fire. They reached the stairs, started down. That's when the velarium fell. The Colosseum's elliptical design was brilliant architecture. The vomitoria, those exit passages, could empty 50,000 people in 15 minutes during planned evacuations. The engineers had calculated every angle, every slope, every flow rate. But nobody had calculated what happens when you turn an elliptical amphitheater into a chimney. When the velarium collapsed inward, it fell onto the arena floor and the marble seating. Burning canvas, burning ropes, burning wood, all falling into the center of an ellipse that was essentially a giant bowl. Hot air rises, basic physics. The superheated air from the burning velarium rose up through the center of the Colosseum, drawing oxygen in through the vomitoria. The building became a blast furnace. Temperature in the upper levels, 800 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to melt lead, hot enough to calcinate marble, hot enough to turn human bone to powder. The wooden arena floor, that 80-meter-long platform that gladiators fought on, it ignited next. Not from the falling velarium, from the heat, from pure thermal radiation. Then the floor collapsed. Antonius was 19 years old. He'd been a slave in the hypogeum for 4 months. The hypogeum, the underground maze beneath the arena, was Rome's most sophisticated machine. 60 winches, 28 trapdoors, elevators that could raise lions to arena level in 3 seconds. A hydraulic system that could flood the entire space for naval battles. It was an engineering marvel. It was also a death trap. When the arena floor collapsed, burning debris fell into the hypogeum. Wooden beams, canvas, bodies, gladiators, and animals who'd been on the floor when it gave way. The sound was apocalyptic. Travertine blocks, each weighing 2,000 kilograms, crashed through the collapsed floor and into the underground. They destroyed the winch systems, crushed the elevators, smashed the carefully engineered machine that made the games possible. Antonius was in the eastern section, preparing a lion for the next event. The beast was in a cage, pacing, agitated by the thunder. Then the floor above collapsed. The lion's cage was crushed by a falling travertine block. The animal died instantly. 2,000 kilograms of stone removed the concept of mercy from the equation. Antonius dove behind a wall, felt the shockwave of impact, felt the building shake. Then he smelled it. Smoke? The hypogeum had a ventilation system, shafts running from underground to the surface, bringing fresh air down to the slaves and animals. Necessary engineering, fatal design flaw. Now, those shafts were bringing smoke. 200 slaves were trapped in the hypogeum that night. Men who'd spent their lives preparing death for others. Men who maintained the machines, fed the animals, cleaned the blood. The gates were locked. Standard security protocol. During games, the underground was sealed. No escapes. No unauthorized exits. Now the protocol was a death sentence. The water system, Decimus said. He was 24. He'd been in the hypogeum for 2 years. The flood channels connect to the Tiber. The Colosseum had an elaborate underground water system, pipes and channels that could flood the arena for Naumachia, the staged naval battles. Those channels led directly to the Tiber River, 400 meters away. If they could break through the water gate, they ran through the smoke, 200 men, choking, gasping, their lungs burning. The hypogeum was a maze, deliberate design to prevent escapes. Now, it prevented salvation. Some men got lost, turned down wrong corridors. The smoke was getting thicker, darker. You couldn't see 3 meters ahead. Antonius heard them dying, heard them coughing, heard them call for mothers they'd never see again. They found the water gate at 9:15 p.m. Iron, solid, locked. They beat against that gate like men possessed. Hooks, chains, metal bars meant for controlling animals. Anything that could be used as a weapon against iron. The smoke was getting thicker. Some men were already on their knees, lungs giving out. The human body can survive for 3 minutes without oxygen, less if the air is filled with toxic ash. Break it, Decimus screamed. Break it. But iron doesn't break. That's why Romans used it. That's why it held together aqueducts and bridges and gates. That's why it held 200 men in place while they suffocated. Antonius's vision was darkening at the edges. His chest hurt. Every breath was fire. He looked at the gate, inches of iron between him and the Tiber River, between him and life. So close. His last thought was surprisingly clear. I should have run when I had the chance. The gate held. 50,000 people were in the Colosseum when the fire started. The building had 80 exits, the vomitoria. Under normal circumstances, perfect design. 15-minute evacuation time. But these weren't normal circumstances. Emperor Macrinus was gone. The Praetorian Guard had swept him out the moment the lightning struck. First rule of imperial protection: save the emperor. Everything else is negotiable. Without the emperor, without authority, the crowd became something else. Senator Publius Cornelius was 61 years old. He'd survived 3 emperor's purges. He'd commanded legions in Germania. He'd negotiated with barbarian kings. He died on the stairs of the Colosseum, crushed by a crowd that he'd helped govern. It started slowly, just pressure, just people moving toward exits. Then someone screamed, "Fire!" and slow became stampede. Human bodies are strong. They can withstand significant pressure. But when 500 people are pushing from behind, when there's nowhere to go, when the exit ahead is blocked by fallen people, physics is merciless. Publius felt his ribs compress. 1 crack. He could still breathe. 2 cracks. Breathing was hard. 3 cracks. His lung was punctured. He was drowning in his own blood, standing up, crushed between Roman citizens he'd spent his life serving. His last thought was bitter. "This is how Rome thanks me." The Vigilists, Rome's fire brigade, arrived at 9:20 p.m. 7,000 men, trained, equipped, ready, completely, utterly inadequate. The Vigiles were designed for urban fires, house fires, building fires, fires that spread horizontally through a city. They had buckets, hand pumps, water chains. They did not have equipment for a 50-meter tall amphitheater with the upper levels burning at 800 degrees Celsius. Marcus Valerius Messala, commander of the 7th cohort, no relation to our Valerius Marcus, stood outside the Colosseum and understood immediately that he was watching history. "Drain the aqueducts," he ordered. "All of them." It was a desperate plan. The Aqua Claudia, Rome's major aqueduct, could deliver 190,000 cubic meters of water per day. If they redirected the flow toward the Colosseum, the engineering was brilliant. The execution was flawed. The water arrived at 9:45 p.m. Thousands of cubic meters flowing through hastily assembled channels directed at the burning upper levels. The result was catastrophic. Cold water plus stone heated to 800 degrees equals spalling. The marble and travertine literally exploded. Violent cracking, fragmentation. Blocks of stone weighing 500 kilograms fractured and fell. The falling stones killed 23 Vigiles, crushed them. Their bodies weren't found for 3 days, buried under rubble and ash. The water also mixed with the falling ash, creating dense, choking mud. The arena floor, what remained of it, filled with this toxic sludge. The hypogeum flooded. Antonius and the 200 slaves weren't just suffocating anymore. They were drowning. In ash, in the dark, underground. The fire burned for 3 hours. When dawn broke on August 24th, 217 AD, Rome woke to a new reality. The Colosseum was still standing. The outer walls, the lower seating, the stone had survived. But everything else, the Manianum Summum in Lignius, the wooden upper gallery, gone. Completely. Not even ash remained in some sections. Just air where structure had been. The velarium system, 147 years of engineering, destroyed. The masts, the ropes, the pulleys, all gone. The arena floor collapsed into the hypogeum, mixing with ash and water and the bodies of those who'd been underground. The hypogeum itself, flooded, its machinery destroyed. Travertine blocks scattered like toys where the sophisticated winch systems had been. They found Marcus Valerius's body on the 3rd level. The recovery crews needed 3 days to reach it. What fire does to a human body over 3 hours? The records don't describe it. The records just list Marcus Valerius, Valerius, died in service. Julius survived. 16 years old, burns covering 30% of his body, hands scarred so badly he could barely hold a cup. He would never work the ropes again. But he was alive. Official casualty figures, 1,100 dead. Unofficial estimates, 3,000. The truth? Somewhere in between, and impossible to verify. The bodies in the hypogeum weren't found for a week. The flooding had turned the underground into a toxic swamp. When workers finally pumped it out, they found 200 slaves, all dead, their fingernails torn off from clawing at the water gate, their lungs filled with ash and water. Many had died standing up, held vertical by the press of bodies behind them. Antonius's body was identified by a scar on his left arm. His mother claimed him. She was a freedwoman who'd saved for 10 years to buy his freedom. She was 3 weeks away from having enough money. 3 weeks. Senator Publius Cornelius was found on the stairs. They identified him by his senatorial ring, the only part of him that wasn't crushed beyond recognition. The Vigiles lost 23 men, crushed by falling stone. Their names were recorded, at least. Rome remembered its firefighters, even if it forgot its slaves. The Colosseum was closed, not for days, Not for months, for 6 years. The gladiatorial games, Rome's essential service, the empire's primary tool of social control had to continue. But where? The Stadium of Domitian. Modern Piazza Navona, a Greek-style athletic stadium designed for foot races and discus throws, not for blood sports, not for venaciones with lions and bears. Capacity, 30,000. Half of what the Colosseum could hold. The games continued, but they were different. Smaller, less spectacular. The wild beast hunts were limited. The stadium didn't have the safety infrastructure. Archaeological evidence suggests something else happened in the Stadium of Domitian during this period. The arcades beneath the seating, they became brothels. Taxed, regulated, the revenue directed toward restoration efforts. Rome needed money to rebuild its monument to death, so it monetized sex in the spaces meant for athletics. The poetry of that irony was not lost on contemporary writers. The restoration took 20 years. Emperor Macrinus started it. He lasted 14 months after the fire before being overthrown. His head was displayed on a pike in the Forum. Divine punishment, the priest said. Vulcanus had marked him. Emperor Elagabalus continued it. He lasted 4 years before being assassinated. His body was dragged through streets and thrown in the Tiber. Emperor Alexander Severus pushed it forward. In 223 AD, he minted coins showing the Colosseum fully restored. Propaganda. The coins were beautiful. The reality was different. Archaeological evidence shows the upper levels weren't actually finished. But the coins mattered more than reality. The coin said, "Rome is back. Rome is eternal. Rome cannot be destroyed." Emperor Gordian III finally finished it. In 240 AD, a medallion from his reign showed a bull and elephant fighting in the arena, proof that the hypogeum machinery was working again, proof that the games had returned to their home. 23 years after the fire, 3 emperors, thousands of slaves' labor, millions of sesterces, all to rebuild a monument that would be ruins within 250 years anyway. Here's the cosmic joke. The Colosseum survived the fire. They rebuilt it, made it stronger, added lightning rods, reinforced the stone. For what? In 250 AD, 33 years after the Great Fire, lightning struck it again. Another fire, less devastating but still damaging. In 443 AD, 226 years after the fire, an earthquake collapsed the southern wall, the same wall that had been weakened by the fire damage in 217. In 484 AD, 267 years after the fire, another earthquake, more collapse. By 523 AD, the games had stopped completely. Christianity had won. The Colosseum was obsolete. By 600 AD, it was a quarry. Romans were taking the stone to build churches. By 1000 AD, it was a fortress, then a garbage dump, then a stable for animals. The building Marcus Valerius died to protect. The monument Antonius suffocated for. The structure that killed Senator Cornelius. It became a ruin. Julius lived to see it. He died in 257 AD, 40 years after the fire. He was 56. His hands were still scarred. His nightmares never stopped. He watched the Colosseum continue to crumble, watched Rome begin its long collapse. He knew the empire was dying. Everyone knew. The lightning in 217 AD hadn't been divine punishment. It had been a preview. August 23rd, 217 AD, Vulcanalia, the fire god's day. 147 years of blood sacrifices. 1 lightning bolt. 3 hours of fire. 6 years of exile. 20 years of reconstruction. And for what? Marcus Valerius burned alive, saving his son. Julius got 40 more years of nightmares and useless hands. Antonius clawed at an iron gate until his fingers broke. Died meters from freedom he could smell but never reach. Senator Publius Cornelius served Rome for 40 years. Rome crushed his ribs and drowned him in his own blood. 200 slaves died in the dark, underground, forgotten. And the Colosseum? It stands today. Tourists take photos. Guides tell sanitized stories. School groups learn about Roman engineering. Nobody mentions Marcus. Nobody remembers Antonius. Nobody knows Publius's name. But the stone? The stone is immortal. That's the brutal truth history teaches us. Buildings survive. Stone lasts. Monuments endure. People are just fuel for time's fire. Cassius Dio wrote about the fire. He was there. He watched it happen. He recorded it for posterity. But even he didn't list the names of the slaves. Didn't count them as casualties worth recording. 200 men. Mothers' sons. Some had families. Some had dreams of freedom. History forgot them immediately. But here's what history doesn't tell you. When archaeologists excavated the hypogeum in modern times, they found scratches on the walls near the Watergate. Finger marks. Desperate. Animal scratches from men trying to claw through stone. The marks are still there. You can see them if you take the underground tour. The tourists don't know what they're looking at. The guides don't mention them. But they're there. Evidence of 200 men who died trying. That's their monument. Not stone, not marble, just desperate scratches in the dark. Number. The ending. The Colosseum burned on August 23rd, 217 AD. It was rebuilt. It burned again. It was rebuilt again. It survived earthquakes, survived barbarians, survived the fall of Rome itself. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. One of the new 7 wonders of the world. 6 million tourists visit annually. They take selfies in front of the monument to death. They don't know about Marcus. They don't know about Antonius. They don't know about the 200 scratches on the Watergate. But the stone knows. Stone remembers everything. It remembers the lightning. It remembers the fire. It remembers the screaming. And if you visit at dawn, when the tourists aren't there yet, when the light hits the walls at just the right angle, you can still see the smoke stains. 147 years of blood washed away by one night of fire. But the stains? Those are permanent. That's the brutal truth. Rome was eternal until it wasn't. The Colosseum was immortal until lightning proved otherwise. And Marcus, Antonius, Publius, Julius, and 200 nameless slaves, they were just people. And people burn. August 23rd, 217 AD. The night the fire god collected his debt. The night Rome learned that stone outlives men. The night the Colosseum died and took 3,000 souls with it. They rebuilt the building. They couldn't rebuild the people. That's history. That's Rome. That's the brutal, ash-stained truth that doesn't make it into the textbooks. Lightning doesn't care about empires. Fire doesn't read propaganda coins. Death is the only democracy that ever worked. And in the end, we're all just ash waiting to happen. The only question is, what will the stone remember you for?